and we're here to talk about North Alabama Unionists in the Civil War. What's a Unionist?
Civil War, what was the Union? Say it again, somebody said it. The North.
So if you were in North Alabama and you were a Unionist, where did your sympathies lie during the war? With the Union. Right. Okay. Now, I grew up in Alabama. I grew up in Montgomery, capital of the Confederacy. It's where it all began. Jefferson Davis was installed as the President of the Confederate States of America on the steps of the Alabama State Capitol, and you go down there, you can find a little brass star on the floor that tells you that's where he stood when he became the President of the Confederacy. Now that's the environment I grew up in. 12 years of public school, 4 years of college in Alabama. And I never heard a word about these people that we're now calling the Unionists. It was a piece of our Alabama history, a piece of our Alabama heritage that was not taught, was not told. I don't know whether you have heard that these people existed or not. I did not know until I was several times older than you are now, when I learned the story. I learned about it when my wife's mother died 40 years ago. And the family was sitting around telling stories the way families do at funerals. And they began talking about when Grandpa came home from the Civil War. Well, they told that story before. Everybody in the room had heard that story multiple times, except for one detail. The old folks in the room had never remembered to tell the young folks in the room, no, Grandpa wasn't in the Confederate Army, he was in the Union Army. Wow. When I heard that, a light bulb went off in my head, and I thought, now there's a story in that somewhere if I can just find it. Well, it took me nearly 40 years, but I found it, and I wrote a book about it. This is a historical novel based here in North Alabama about these people from North Alabama who fought for the Union. And this is the story built around actually my wife's great-great-grandfather's actual war experience. I had his actual record from the National Archives in Washington, which told me during the war where he was, who he served with, and what he was doing. So I was able to take that, make a timeline that put where he was and what was going on in the Civil War during that same period in that area, and figure out the details of his service. So I told the story. It was not a popular position to take, but every Confederate state, this is a map of the Confederate States of America. It's the southeastern United States. Here's Alabama. There are 11 of these states that were the Confederate states. Every single one of them had at least one unit that served in the Union Army. Alabama had only one, and I'm going to tell you more about them. The green that I marked on this map, and don't worry about the difference in the light and the dark green, that was just a matter of when I made the marks on the map and what color green marker I had to do it with. But these are areas in the United States that were largely sympathetic to the Union, opposed to the Confederacy. So you see, North Alabama is a significant part of that. But it isn't unique by any means. In the sweep of territory from northeast corner of Mississippi, across North Alabama, southern Tennessee, eastern Tennessee, northwestern Georgia, up into the Carolinas, and all the way up into Virginia, there was very strong sympathy for the Union, opposition to the Confederacy. This Virginia is what is now the state of West Virginia. The state of West Virginia, when Virginia withdrew from the Union to join the Confederacy, the people of that part of Virginia said, we ain't gonna go there. And they actually formed their own state. And that's when the state of West Virginia came into existence. That's what this is. They were never actually a part of the Confederacy. They joined it. But it was very, very solidly support for the Union anti-Confederacy. But you see, all these, every one of these states, there are these pockets of Union supporters. Every Confederate state had at least one unit that served in the Union Army. Alabama had only one, but it was a fascinating bunch of people. I'm going to tell you a bit of the history about how it came to be. But one of the important things to know is, in Alabama, in 1862-3 time period, the 1st Alabama Cavalry, United States Volunteers, served alongside the 1st Alabama Cavalry of the Colored Troops of America. Black and white serving side by side in Alabama in 1862. The units themselves were not integrated. There were black units and white units, but they served under the same command, and they served, although separately, they served side by side through the entirety of the war. And that story has been told by another person here in Decatur who's written this story also. Peggy Allen Towns, a very good friend. Peggy's supposed to be here, but she's in the hospital today, so she's not here making her presentation. She's written a book called Duty Driven, which is the plight of North Alabama's African Americans during the Civil War. There is no record. There's no reliable record that's ever been produced that says that any African Americans actually joined the Confederate Army and fought for it. There were African Americans who fought on the Confederate side, but they were there as the servants of white soldiers, wealthy white soldiers, and they did on occasion take up arms. But there's no reliable evidence that any African American ever actually joined freely the Confederate Army. There were hundreds, actually thousands, who did in fact join the Union Army here in Alabama. Why would they have done that? Why would native-born Alabamans, like my wife's great-great-grandfather, Thomas Files from Jasper, why would they do that? Well, Tom, and this is partly fiction and partly real, because the story was handed down over and over again in my wife's family. But here's how it happened for him. Rebel yells shattered the quiet North Alabama night like the yowls of wild cats, jerking us awake. The thud, thud, thud of bullets hitting the house added to our terror. This is being told, by the way, by Tom's 14-year-old daughter, Fanny. Both of us girls went running from our room, screaming for Pa. Ma was sitting up straight in bed, shaking with fear, Pa holding her tight in his arms. A gruff voice, when he came, sounded very close, from beside the door or maybe at a window. This is a warning, Tom Files. If I have to come here again, there's going to be bloodshed. The next time we will get you, all of you. The voice told Pa to get himself into town and sign up to fight for the Southern cause. After that, there was just the crunch of gravel under the hooves of departing horses, letting us know the attack was over. The only remaining sounds were our muffled sobs. The morning sun broke through the gray winter clouds, letting us see the damage done to our house. None of the windows were broke. Their aim had been deliberate. They had not intended to do us any real harm. It was just a warning, just like the voice said. It wasn't the first time the Home Guard had paid us a call, but it had never been that violent before. That's how it came. That Pa and 6 or 8 other men from around here left on the 3rd day of the new year, 1863. They was going to fight for the Union with the 1st Alabama Cavalry, United States Volunteers. He was going to sign up for 1 year, so we should expect him back home about this same time next year. Didn't work out that way, but you'll have to read the book to figure that out. I marked that down in my mind, January 1864. I would be counting the days. Pa left just before my 13th birthday. It was the worst day of my life, and it lasted about 3 years. Longer than that, truth be told, because it still comes back in my sleep, leaving me weak to my stomach. Now, Pa's words that day ring clear as a bell in my mind. My grandpa and his daddy fought to make this union back in 1776. And I can't sit by and let these secessionists take it apart without putting up a fight. We are patriots, and we ain't taking no part with this rebellion against the United States of America. Now, the numbers are a little hard to come by, but actually, here in North Alabama, there were somewhere between 7,000 and 10,000 of those people. Over the whole Confederacy, there was something between 170 and 200,000. Now, if you just put that in the logistics of the war, that means there were enough of those people, had they been fighting for the Confederacy, there would have been enough manpower there to perhaps sway the outcome of the war. It could, in fact, have changed the direction of the war. Decatur was a significant part in this movement here in North Alabama. There was a man from this area who served in the state legislature. His name was Christopher Sheets, who was a member of the Alabama State Senate. And Christopher Sheets was a leader in this group of people who were loyal to the Union. He was in the legislature when the legislature voted to withdraw from the Union and join the Confederacy. When that vote was taken, there were about 30 people who voted against withdrawing from the Union. Had that been changed by a single vote, had there been 31 of them, Alabama would not have left the Union. When the vote was taken, the motion to withdraw from the Union passed by 1 single vote. Now, I told you, I grew up here, never heard any of this story. I never heard that. The story I always heard was this was the solid South, and everybody was all in the same boat. That was not true. There was a strong minority of people who were loyal Americans and who were opposed to the withdrawal to form the Confederacy. Christopher Sheets began to organize those people. Actually, there's a little more to the story. When the legislature voted to withdraw, those 30 people who voted against it were all arrested right then on the floor of the state capitol and put in jail. Sheets served several weeks in jail. He finally was released. And he came back to North Alabama, and he began to talk to his friends about what they ought to do. And he became friends, well, he became acquainted with an officer in the United States Army, a Colonel Abel Streight, S-T-R-E-I-G-H-T, Colonel Abel Streight. And he began to try to convince Colonel Streight that these people, these North Alabama folks, were legitimate. The command in the United States Army didn't believe that. They thought, they were afraid these people were really spies, and they were just trying to get in to be spies. And Christopher Sheets convinced Colonel Streight that that was not true, introduced him to a number of these people. They had straight conversations with them. Colonel Streight was able to go to his commanding officer, who was General Granville Dodge. Yeah, the Dodge cars, same people. General Granville Dodge was from Michigan. He was the commander of the whole of the United States Army in this part of the country. So Christopher Sheets and his friend Abel Strait went to General Dodge, and they were able to convince the general that this was legitimate. And that's when the command structure of the United States Army gave approval for the formation of the 1st Alabama Cavalry, United States Volunteers, and parallel to that, the Alabama regiments of the colored troops of America. That's happening. When it was approved, Christopher Sheets took about between 175 and 200 of his friends over to northeast Mississippi, around what are now the city of Corinth, there was a Union headquarters in that area, and they joined the United States Army. That was the beginning, what came to be called the 1st Alabama Cavalry, United States Volunteers, and beside it, as I said, the colored troops. Here is what Colonel Strait wrote about these people when he was in the process of convincing them. I wish to say a word in relation to the condition of these people. They are mostly poor, though many of them are, or rather were, in comfortable circumstances. They outnumber nearly 3 to 1 the secessionists in portions of Morgan, that's Decatur, Blunt, Winston, Marion, Walker, that's Jasper, Fayette, and Jefferson, that's Birmingham counties. But situated as they are, surrounded by a most relentless foe, mostly unarmed and destitute of ammunition, they are persecuted in every conceivable way. Yet up to this time, most of them have kept out of the way sufficiently to avoid being dragged off by the gangs that infest the country for the purpose of plunder and enforcing provisions of the Rebel Conscription Act. Their horses and cattle are driven off in vast numbers. Every public road is patrolled by guerrilla bands, and Union men have been compelled to seek protection in the vastness of the mountain wilderness. They cannot hold out much longer. This state of things has so disturbed them that they are willing, the state of things has so disturbed them that, but with very little attention having been paid to farming, consequently, many of them are destitute of food or their own and are living off their fortunate neighbors. Such examples of patriotism as these people have set forth are worthy of being followed. So that was the argument that Naval Strait, and those were his own words, when he convinced the Army to form the 1st Alabama Cavalry. Somewhere between 7,000 and 10,000 people from North Alabama served in that unit. Decatur was central to that. Decatur was actually under control of the Union Army through most of the war. There was a brief period when the Confederacy held. But it was extremely important because we had, for one thing, we had the Tennessee River. And we also had 2 railroads, a north-south railroad and an east-west railroad that crossed right here at what was called in those days Decatur Junction. So strategically, it was a very important place. Now, when the Union Army held Decatur, it was not all a pleasant time. When you've got thousands of soldiers in this little territory, they have to be housed somewhere. But what they did was displaced the entire population of Decatur, sent them away, and tore down every building that existed in this town, every church, every house, except for 5 buildings. There are 5 buildings in Decatur that still stand that were not destroyed by the Union occupiers. One of those, obviously, the old First State Bank building down on Bank Street. But there are 5, and then there are 4 other buildings, residences, that are marked with historical markers, and if you're interested in it, you can find them. Judge Breland, who's here, Dr. Dave Breland, is Decatur's historian, and he can point you to every one of those and tell you the whole story about each one of them if you have time to listen to it. So it was not a pleasant time. Decatur did recover and became a central part of the attempt to recruit North Alabamans into the Union Army. There are lots of interesting stories, some of which are in my book, but you have to read the book to get that part of the story. These are people who, though after the war, came back home and they still had to live side by side with the people who had served in the Confederate Army, and it was not a pleasant experience. Now these are real stories. If I name people, they're real people, and if I describe the event, a specific event, it's real. One fellow from the 1st Alabama told about his brother-in-law who came home when his term was up from the Union Army. He was badly mistreated before they strung him up on a tree in his own yard. They doused him with turpentine and set him afire while his family had to watch. George Curtis came home on leave. George Curtis was over around the Athens area. I spoke to the Athens Rotary Club a year or so ago. I read this piece. There was actually a descendant of this George Curtis who was in the audience. George Curtis came home on leave, and the Home Guard killed him right in his yard while his wife and 3 children looked on. The Home Guard arrested Henry Tucker at his home over in Marion County. They tied him to a tree before they gouged out his eyes and cut out his tongue. Then they literally skinned him alive. Others were ambushed. A whole lot of them were killed and conscripted into the Confederate Army. Union families have been tormented and harassed and killed. There was a family over in Jones County, Mississippi, whose man was shot. Everything they owned trashed, burned, or stolen away. That woman and her 5 children had nothing left to their name but the empty shell of a house. No food, no clothes, nothing. Not even a cup or a plate to drink or eat from. I thought if I came back, I would put all of you in that danger. And that goes on to other parts of the story. But that's the kind of atmosphere that existed. Now, that's real. That's a part of our Alabama and our Southern heritage, both black and white. And friends, we are still living with the consequences of all of this. I don't know whether you know the name of William Faulkner, famous novelist. In his play, Requiem for a Nun, he has a line that's extremely important. He says, the past is never dead. It isn't even past. We are living right here, right now, with the consequences of those things that happened 150, 160 years ago. Part of the story, a lot of the story, we have chosen to bury. This story we have chosen to bury. I'm not aware where we are with having this story taught in our schools now. But as I told you, 12 years of public school and 4 years of college in Alabama, and I never heard a word of these people until I married to this family. I hope that has changed or will change, because if we don't learn how to face the reality of our history.
Attention please, teachers.